Hello everyone, and welcome back to my series of videos showing the making of a small pipe organ from scratch. As you can see, I'm back in the workshop, and between you and me, the organ in question, which we've been working on, is now complete and has been delivered to the venue. But I'm not going to disclose, unlike most radio and television programs nowadays, I'm not going to give any spoilers. You'll have to wait right to the end to see where it is, and we'll get some pictures of it in situ and etc. when it's finished. So the next video will be of the keyboard. It will be come in two parts. The first part being the key frame, marking out the slab in readiness to put the coverings on and slicing it up into the levers and finishing it off with the sharps, etc. So thank you so much for continuing to watch, if that is indeed what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode, making the keyboard. Okay, the keyboard. Always one of the most satisfying things to do. It's critical, obviously, because it's the connection between the player and the instrument. So we start off with the key cheeks of the key frame. We're going to make a small profile on the end of the cheeks to make it a little bit more interesting rather than just have a square block. We start on the router, cutting out the front. These are 4 cheeks glued together, so I'm doing 2 keyboards at a time. I'll do one for this instrument and I'll have one in stock then for the next one I do. So I haven't done the end. Now we've got to do the little return curve, as it were, so I'm just winding the cutter up gradually to get the same profile as the front, and that's done by just winding the table up very slightly, 0.5 millimeter at a time. Not winding the table, winding the cutter up from the table. Now you can see went too slowly and it's burnt the wood, so that's not the final pass. The final pass is just 1/10 millimeter, which will get rid of that the scorch marks and move a little bit faster so the cutter can't burn the wood. And there we go. That's the easy bit. The next bit is cutting the profiles, the slope profile, which runs into you can see the profile I've drawn there. So I'm going to cut most of it away with the saw first, and I haven't found any other way of doing this other than finishing off with a chisel by hand. And it's a tricky process, but it's as I say, I can't find any other way of doing it, so this is the way I do it. I'm sure there are probably better ways of doing it. So I'm just nibbling away most of the material on the small circular saw, winding the blade up very slightly and moving the fence as we go, work into that shaded area. These cheeks are English walnut, English black walnut actually. I inherited a felled tree a few years ago. It came down in 1987 storms that we had here in southern England, and the guy cut the tree up into slabs quite soon after the storm and had them in his shed for 20 odd years before he got a little bit long in tooth and realised he wasn't going to use it, so he offered it to me, and I've got an awful lot of it in the wood store, which is absolutely wonderful. It's beautiful, beautiful timber, and it's lovely, obviously, to use English wood where I can. So now we're cutting the dovetails for the 2 rails. There are 2 rails on the frame. There's a rail at the back for the pivot and a rail at the front for the guide pins. This is beech, and I'm making some dovetails, which I very, very rarely do. So I'm going to leave this, going to show quite a lot of this because it's all good fun. I've drawn a little pencil line there, do you see it? I'm working back to so that I don't take too much off, and knife markings on the side, so I'm constantly working to a knife. But you can't work to a pencil line with dovetails, it's just not accurate enough. The pencil itself is 0.5 millimeter thick, so if you're going with a sharp knife, you've got something to work with, and then it's far more accurate. Now the idea is to cut these dovetails so that they fit first time. You don't really want to have to adjust them. This is all theory. It doesn't always work out that way, but I've filmed this one because it went quite well. Beech is a good hard timber. It's nice and stable, so you want the rails obviously to stay as flat as possible. So that was the one of the dovetails for the front rail. This is the back rail, which is for the pivot pins, and this very slightly thicker, so the dovetails are a little bit bigger. Cut to within a ½ millimetre of the knife edge, so just very little cleaning needed up with a chisel. No, I'm using a scalpel blade actually. I do use scalpel blades a lot, so they're really, really useful for so many things. And you don't have to sharpen them. This is called a gent saw. It's a cabinet maker's fine saw, and these chisels are I think they're one of the best chisels you can buy. They're Lee Nielsen, made by a company in New England in America, and they're absolutely beautiful, beautiful chisels. They come beautifully finished. You don't have to grind the backs or anything. They're already completely flat, and I use a secondary bevel. As you can see, there are 2 bevels on the chisel, which makes it a lot easier to sharpen. So you don't have to sharpen the whole bevel, you're just sharpening the tip of the chisel. But you won't get a sharp chisel unless the back of the plane is completely flat. Anyone who tells you otherwise is just plain wrong. You'll see when I turn the blade over, you'll see the back of that plane is polished to within an inch of its life. Plane. I said plane, I meant chisel. Sharpening blades, woodworking blades is obviously a critical part of woodworking. You can't work with blunt tools. You'll never get good results. Stating the obvious, obviously, but it's so true. So I'm just nibbling away back to that knife mark that I've got on the side. And then we're going to cut the mortise of the dovetail, which is a lot easier to cut this walnut than it was the beech. It's a lot softer. This is lovely, lovely, lovely timber to work. I've drilled out most of this on the pillar drill, as you can see. So we're just nibbling away back to that knife edge, that knife mark. I don't do much work by hand. I do, obviously, because you're trying to make a living out of this, you need to do things as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and most of the work I do inevitably is done with machines. So it is actually quite nice to get on the bench and do some dovetails occasionally. Apologise for the wobbly camera. I've mounted the camera on a mini tripod on the bench. Of course, it's every time I bash the chisel, the tripod moves. You need a bit of patience with this. You really don't want to try and take too much material off at once. You want to just take tiny amounts off and work your way back to that line. And I'm hoping that when this is done, we can just slot the beach rail into this without too much, well, hopefully with no adjustments at all. We'll see. Now we're nearly ready to offer the other piece up. And when the dovetails go right, they are really satisfying. And that's looking good. I showed this one on purpose because this is the one that went the smoothest and the easiest. But you know, if you're working to the knife lines, you normally get this right each time, every time. And there we have it. It's a wonderful joint, isn't it? The dovetail. It's ancient. You see why it's so successful. So now we've done all 4 joints, the front rail and the back rail, and we'll just put it all together, just to check it's all square. And then see if it's flat on the bench, which it is. Now those dovetails will have screws in them. They will be held in place with screws because they're obviously over time they could come loose. And that's just showing the recessed rail, back rail set in there, which I haven't filmed, but that just holds the back rail completely flat, and it holds everything together, upright and square. And there you see the profile of the front of the key cheeks as well. So we're on to the slab now, which is the key levers themselves, and this is English lime. Again, this is Dorset lime. Actually, this was a tree that was felled 5 miles from here on the previous workshop I was at. We felled it, we cut it, and we dried it in a solar kiln. So it's rather thrilling to be able to use it for these keys. So I've cut the slabs up, joined them up to thickness, and now we're just making sure it's all flat and the joints are all flush with this wonderful plane. I love this plane. It's a Lee Nielsen American plane. It's got a blade in it that's actually a low angle, so it copes with some dodgy grain really well. If you get it sharp, it's just I love this plane. It's just wonderful. Now this should just take one going over from left to right or right to left, and turn it over. Do the same on the other side. We'll cut it to length, front and back, and then we add a moulding on the front, which I have the moulding ready there. I've made dozens of these quite a while ago, so I can't show you how I did this, but it's basically on the router table. It's a profile that I made up because with the router cutters that I've got available. So we put glue on both surfaces here because we're gluing onto end grain, just to make doubly sure. But again, this glue is wonderful at pretty much everything. And I will just clamp this down with masking tape. Which is all it needs. It's moulding is made of oak, so it goes. It'll match the casework. There's no particular reason why I make the cheeks out of walnut. It's just to have something different, and its availability as well. I do have a lot of it, so I thought it'd be nice to use it. So no, it contrasts well with the oak. So we'll add more masking tape all the way along there. I won't show all of this. The next process is to get the keys marked out onto the slab. So the way I do it is I just print off the keyboard on the plotter from the drawing and prick through for all the crucial places where I'm going to drill. These holes from here are the screw holes that go down into the little nose, what I call noses underneath the keys, which sit on the action. We'll see that'll become clear later when we do the action. But and then we're pricking through for the tail pins. So this is a suspended action, which means that the keys are sitting on top of the action rather than pushing the action with a balanced action. So this literally just the key is pivoting from a back rail, from the pin at the back. So now we mark where all the critical marks are on the naturals. We're just going to mark out the keyboard on the slab, so we know where to glue the coverings on. And there's a picture of a balanced action showing how the key is pivoting in the middle and pulling the action up at the back. And mark the back of the covering, that line at the back, and then we mark all the naturals. And this is just telling me where because the coverings will be exactly the right width for each of these, a width of one key. So where that long line is, that goes through between the C's and the B's and the E's and the F's. Those of you who are familiar with the keyboard. So now before we glue the coverings on, we've got to drill the pivot holes at the back and the guide pins at the front. So these are the pivots, which is basically drilling down into the rail at the back with a clearance so that we can put a little guide slot over the top of the key so that the key doesn't rock side to side. That will become apparent again in a minute, or probably in the next video actually, that bit. But anyway, these are the guide pins at the front, so I've turned it around 380 degrees. We're going to the guide pins. Now the way I do it is, it's very much like a piano keyboard. They're called bat pins, and there they are. These are the bat pins. They're called bat pins, I presume, because they're shaped like a cricket bat. But the really clever thing about these is that when they wear in the slot, we'll have felted bushings either side of these pins, which inevitably over the years will wear. And as they wear, you can turn, with a special tool, you can turn these pins so that they become tighter in the slot, so the keys aren't wobbling about. And then obviously when they get completely worn, but they will have to be, the bushing cloth will have to be changed. But so we need to join up, we need to make a slot now for the bushing cloth, either side of that pin, the hole that I drilled into the slab. So we've taken the slab off the rail, off the keyframe, and we're just cutting a slot which will be bushed with felt. And this is just incredibly laborious, but it's just the hole that I'm working to is the same diameter as the collet or the stem of the router cutter. So I'm pushing it down into the hole, and then just pushing the square or the fence up to the router, and then cutting the slot. I'll get an angle from the other side in a minute. We're going to see. I've cut 2 holes, you see, either side of that hole for the pin. And I'm just joining up the 2 dots, basically. To stop the cutter, push it down into the hole, push the fence up to the router, and then we can cut the slots, and there they are, ready to be bushed. Now I'll turn the slab over and I'll cut a slot all the way along, the same thickness as the felt, to take the thickness of that. It's called bushing cloth, used in the piano trade. And I've just got to, again, very laborious, but I've just got to go through every single hole very carefully, and I've made little spaces which are exactly the same thickness as the pins, which will be pushed down into the hole while the glue dries. It's fiddly, but once you've got a technique, it goes quite quickly. So just push the spacer down, and that will hold that in place for the next one. Now we're nearing the end of this part of the keyboard. I think I'm going to do this in 2 parts, so there's only one more part that's necessary, where we'll put the coverings on, cut the keys up, and finish them off. We're actually quite lucky to have any of this footage at all. I think, as I mentioned in the end of the wooden pipes, I've put all my videos on a external hard drive, and the drive froze, which was all a bit scary for a while. I learnt a huge lesson, whereas I didn't back it up. So now everything is backed up on the cloud now as well. We can continue with the series, thank goodness. So there was a point, at some point, I was going to have to make a huge apology to everyone, saying I couldn't actually finish this project. But we're back on track now. The drive went off back to the manufacturer, and they retrieved it under warranty, thank goodness. So this is just a close-up of the bushings. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but I haven't, until now, I haven't worked out what it is. I've got to thank you all for watching this. I've had some lovely comments. In fact, I've had 1 or 2 people being inspired to actually get out there and make some pipes or make an organ, which is fantastic. Which is the whole point of this whole series, was to try and maybe inspire a few people to go ahead and give it a go. It's all really, it's not rocket science. It's all just comes down to practice. But it is obviously useful in knowing the basics, and I always say this isn't the only way to do it. This is just the way I do things. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just the way I do it. And actually I'm hoping also. You might get some comments saying you could do that better, a better, easier way, which would be great. But anyway, they're all the bushings all done already. They'll be those spacers will be in there overnight, and I'll come back the next day and we will turn it over, glue the slabs on, the coverings on, and cut them up. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.